All right. Well, hello, everybody. I think by now I have this down and you should all be able to see and hear me. My name is Daniel Leitner, and I am a licensed financial advisor here at Hendricks Wealth and Estate Management. Today, I am joined by Jim Hendricks, Sean Hendricks, Jim Madel, and Tom Anderson. All right. Getting into the presentation, I want to thank everyone for joining me today to cover a question I hear quite a bit. Should I pay off debt faster or should I be investing instead? Now, I do caution you, if you search this online, you'll probably find completely opposite answers all over the web. Some people will say, all debt is bad, pay it off as fast as possible. Others say, the market always wins, invest everything. Today, I want to show you why both of those answers are incomplete and how to think about this decision using math, your risk tolerance, and understanding real life behavior, not just someone else's opinions. This decision is confusing for three main reasons. First, there's a lot of loud, conflicting advice online. If you click through 3 or 4 different websites, you will likely find 3 or 4 different answers to this question that might leave you more confused than you were before you searched for an answer online. Second, debt decisions are emotional. We're not robots with spreadsheets. Having debt affects people differently. Some people stay up late every night worrying about the debt they have and would rather just pay it off as soon as possible. Then there are some people who just can't seem to wait to have some more debt by buying the next big shiny thing like a boat or a new car. All right, now obviously I named two extremes there, but we are all people who fall somewhere in between those two spots on the debt spectrum. The third reason is most advice ignores the fact that every dollar can only do one thing at a time. You cannot use the same $5 to buy a value meal deal at McDonald's and then use it again to pay off your student loans or invest it in the market or whatever it may be. So today, instead of telling you what you should do, I'm going to give you a framework you can apply to your own situation. A lot of times people can fall into one of two extremes. On one side, we have debt is evil, pay everything off before investing a dollar. Now, this is the category that Dave Ramsey leans toward and is where we differ from him a little bit, which we will cover a little more in depth as we continue throughout this presentation. We believe there is some low interest rate debt that is okay to have. On the other side, some people fall into the mindset that debt doesn't matter, invest everything because the market returns more. Sometimes that can ring true. Lately, the market has had great returns, but that has not always been the case, and that is not guaranteed moving forward. The bottom line is both of these approaches ignore opportunity cost, and that's where most people get the math wrong. Opportunity cost simply means this. When you use a dollar one way, you're giving up what that dollar could have done somewhere else. So, for example, let's say you got an extra $1,000 bonus at the end of the year. First off, woohoo! Congratulations. Now, if you put that extra $1,000 towards your debt, that is $1,000 you cannot invest. But what if instead you invest that $1,000? Well, then you're choosing not to reduce your debt. Neither choice is automatically right or wrong, but both those have measurable consequences. This is just one of those decisions that is like choosing to take the scenic route on the way home from work to see the nice big houses around that big beautiful lake, or taking the most direct route possible to get to your wife and kids as fast as possible. Neither choice is wrong, but be warned, they both have consequences. All right, let's talk about paying off debt first. When you pay down debt, your return is the interest rate on that debt. So if you have a car loan at 6%, paying it off early is like earning a 6% return. Why? Because if you did not make that extra early payment, the amount due on the loan would continue to have grown at 6%. In making that extra payment, there's no market risk, there's no volatility, and importantly, it's effectively tax-free because you're avoiding interest rather than earning income. Now, let's say you have multiple outstanding debts at different values with different interest rates. There are a couple different ways we recommend you pay off those debts. One way is called the snowball method, where you find whatever debt has the lowest total amount due, not interest rate, and pay that debt off first before moving to the second lowest debt, and then so on and so forth. What this does is it creates momentum. People see that the debt can be paid off and they keep knocking it out one debt at a time. The other method is to pay off debt with the highest interest rate first. Everything said and equal, this method costs you less money as you knock out the debt with the highest interest rate first before moving on to the next highest interest rate debt. What this strategy can lack is that feeling of momentum that can be felt in the snowball method. Both are good, solid plans, but it is important to decide what strategy might work best for you. Now, let's jump to investing. Historically, the average rate of return of an S&P 500 index fund is close to 10%. But, and this is critical, those returns are not guaranteed. And it is important to note that past returns are not predictive of future results. The stock market does not always go up smoothly, as many of you know. The stock market can go down 10% one year and then up 20% the next year. There is no straight line guarantee investing in the stock market. Saying that another way, the stock market is volatile, and it is important to consider whether or not you can ride out a down market or if you will need access to your investments soon. Another thing to consider is that when you have gains in the stock market is what the impact of taxes will be on your return. All this to say, when you invest instead of paying off debt, you're trading certainty by locking in that 6% rate in the prior example for potential growth. Now let's walk through a quick example. Let's say Maya has a $100,000 student loan with a 4% interest rate that she will make monthly payments on as she has a self-imposed deadline of 20 years to pay it off. That means she will have a $600 monthly payment for the next 20 years, which equates to $145,000 in payments over the next 20 years. If instead she was able to invest that $600 payment at that 10% rate of return referenced a couple slides ago over the next 20 years, then the future value of all those payments would be $460,000. That's over a $300,000 difference. Wow, that's powerful. Now, don't get me wrong. I am not saying to never pay down your debts, even when they have low to mid interest rates. I just wanted to show you this example so you could understand the power of long-term investing historically in the markets. Of course, there are other factors to consider, like your risk tolerance and how much having debt affects your behavior. But those are all data points we would use to come up with a personalized plan for you. Now let's look at the other end of the spectrum. There are credit cards that are charging 18, 20, even 25% interest on unpaid balances. It is not wise to count on an aggressive, diversified investment strategy to beat that kind of an interest rate. In almost every case, paying off this high interest rate debt should be prioritized before investing and paying off other low interest rate debt. Now, there are some people who live at the extremes with either low or high interest rate debt, but it seems like the majority of people fall into a spot where they are kind of right in the middle with 6 to 12% debt. Think about things like private student loans, personal loans, and sometimes even mortgages. This is where spreadsheets alone are not enough. At these rates, the decision often comes down to risk tolerance and behavior, and not just math on whether to invest, pay down debt, or a combination of both. Here's an example loosely based off a client that we had walk through our doors here at Hendricks. They had all 3 levels of debt: high, intermediate, and low. We helped them develop a strategy that paid off the $10,000 in credit card debt first while making the minimum payments on the other loans. Why? Because the credit card had a 24% interest rate on it, which was much higher than the 8% rate on the private student loan and the 4% rate on the car. We did not even think about having them invest in the stock market at that point because the credit card interest rate was so high that it would be unreasonable to assume that a diversified portfolio would normally achieve that kind of return year after year. Once they got done paying off the 24% credit card, phew, that was a big sigh of relief. We had another meeting to decide whether they should invest, continue maxing out their student loan debt payment, or a combination of both. Now, at this point, it starts to become more subjective and boils down to the individual's risk tolerance and behavior regarding their debt, because it is possible for the market to return a higher rate than their debt grows by, but it is not guaranteed. We ended up landing on the conclusion to have a mixture. They were going to both pay off a portion of their loan while simultaneously investing a portion of their income into the market to capture hopefully greater appreciation. Once the student loan is paid off, I know we will meet again to decide whether to invest more now, max out debt payments on the car, or a mixture of both once again. At that point, it will make investing in the market all the more attractive given the lower interest rate on the car and the long-term historical return of the market we have referenced throughout this presentation. Now, I cannot emphasize enough that this is not a one-size-fits-all type of problem. What is important is picking a plan that you can stick to that takes stress off your shoulders and allows you to move one step closer to the place you want to be financially. Playing off that last example we covered, when people hear risk, they usually think about the stock market. But risk in these situations also includes job stability, emergency savings, stress and peace of mind, and cash flow flexibility. If investing while carrying debt causes anxiety or would create problems during a job disruption, paying down debt can be the better decision at times, even if expected returns are slightly lower. Here are a few common mistakes we see. People ignore taxes. They assume market returns are guaranteed. Now, the market has historically performed well, but it is volatile, which makes it important to know whether you can ride out a down market when investing. They underestimate emotional stress, and they make decisions in isolation instead of looking at the full picture. Good financial decisions are not always about optimization. They're about alignment and moving you to a better spot than you were before. If you're trying to decide what to do next, ask yourself 4 questions. What's the interest rate? Is the interest tax deductible? How long is my time horizon? And can I stay invested during market downturns? Those answers usually point you in the right direction. And don't be afraid to seek help when thinking about these decisions. Having someone you can trust help guide you through these complex decisions can be of great help both financially and emotionally. Here's a summary. High interest debt should usually be paid off first. Low interest debt doesn't always need to delay investing, and most people can benefit from a blended strategy. And behavior matters more than being mathematically perfect. You can develop the best strategy in the world to pay down your debt and invest, but if it is not something you feel comfortable with, are committed to, and genuinely want to make happen, then the plan will fall apart. To conclude, everyone's situation is different. Like I've said throughout this presentation, there is no one-size-fits-all solution for everybody. What we can do here at Hendricks is offer up a personalized analysis of your situation that will give you a roadmap on what the next best steps are based on your specific goals, risk tolerance, and behavior regarding debt and investments. Our goal is to be your lifetime financial partner that guides you through both the challenges and opportunities that inevitably come your way throughout life. That concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to take any questions that you may have at this time.
That was good, Dan. While we're waiting to see if any questions come in, I want to invite everyone to the next few webinars we're going to be hosting. We do these every Wednesday at 11:30 Central, 12:30 Eastern. And on February 18th, we will have Tom Anderson doing a webinar on the first $10,000, building your first real portfolio. On February 25th, I will be doing a presentation on the Bank of Mom and Dad, setting financial boundaries. And then on March 4th, Jim Hendricks will be doing a presentation on why you should work with us. So if you go to our website, hendrickswealth.com, there's a tab up at the top that says events. You can click on that and register for an event that way. Or any of you that found us through social media, you'll likely see our ads out there again for all the upcoming webinars. So thank you for taking the time with us.
Thanks, Jim. And we look forward to seeing you in the future. At this time, I don't see any questions in the chat, so I will just conclude the presentation. So thank you so much to everyone who attended today and is watching this video as a playback. We look forward to hopefully seeing you again next week or at some point in the future. Have a great day.